Ben Chanalea.
Big liver transplant today.
Yeah, wow. And may our learning also be a merit, Lili Nishmas, Meira Chaya, Chana Bracha Bas, David Mordechai. Okay, today's daf is Daf Chav Gimel. We are dealing with pigeons and turtle doves, Torim and Bnei Yonah. Torim are the turtle doves, pigeons are Bnei Yonah. And we learned that the Torim, the Mishnah said, have to be mature. The Bnei Yonah, the word Bnei, they have to be young. So, the Gemara had asked, after discussed Torim, this basic law, that the Torim and Bnei Yonah are different in how old they are or how mature they are. The Gemara had mentioned, the Mishnah said that once these birds get yellow feathers, then they are no good. So the question is why? Is it that when they have yellow feathers, so they're not here and not there, they're already no longer young, but they're not yet mature? Or is it that we're not sure? Right. We're not sure if they're young, or we're not sure if they're mature. So the Gemara said, it can't possibly mean that we're not sure, because as Rava said, it's Tzrichkra Lemute Sveika. Do we need a pasuk, min atorim, min bnei Yonah, to exclude something that we're not sure about? Of course, if we're not sure, then it's no good. So the Gemara said, really, ki tzrichkra, starting today's daf, maybe ki tzrichkra, we don't need the pasuk to exclude the birds with the yellow feathers, because as you said, if it's a suffix, you can't use it. It's a suffix. It's a doubt. What's the pasuk saying? Why do we need the pasuk of minat torim min bnei Yonah? Lemute nirva v'neva. I remember when we said this yesterday, I saw some grimaces. To exclude a bird that had marital relations with a man, some creep went and had intercourse with a bird, and to exclude a bird that was worshipped. So those can't be used as a carbon. So why would I need a pasuk for that? So the Gemara explains, especially in birds we need it. So that's what we're up to. Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, the second line.
Pigeons though?
Pigeons and turtle doves, yes. So it has to
be virgin? Is that what it is, Rabbi?
No, it can't have been with a human being. Can't have been with a human being.
That's what.
It specifically says that. I remember in the Masechet of Dazar, one of the Amoraim says, I saw Bet Kochavim that went to
The Gemara says about Koresh in Masechet Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara says Shegel Liyamino, that Koresh, the great Persian king who allowed us to start rebuilding the second Beis Hamikdash. He didn't have just a wife; he also had a little dog next to him. And that was for his peccadillos, unfortunately. So, says the Gemara, on the second line here, Salkatay Techamina, I would have thought to say, since the verse says, Ki mashchasam bahem, mumbam. It says, Miyad ben echar lo sakrivos lechem alo kechem, Ki mashchasam bahem, mumbam, Lo yeratzu lachem. Since it says ki mashchasam bahem, for their corruption is in them, there is a blemish in them. Tana the Rabbi Yishmael explained. If you have the term hashchasa, it means either marital misbehavior or it means idol worship. So it's saying mashchasam bahem, in their things, in their animals, there is mashchasam, there is dvar erva, there is roveah, there is relations with humans, and there is avodah zarah that gets worshipped. Dvar erva we know is called hashchasa from the mabul. The Chsivit says, Ki yishchis kol basar estar kol haaretz. Hashem said, for all flesh has corrupted their way, and therefore I'm going to bring the flood. And avodas kochavim d'chsiv, idol worship we know is also called hashchasa, as it says pen tashchisun, lest you be corrupt. And you're going to make for yourselves an idol. So what's the next part of the verse? Ki mashchasam bahem mumbam. So it's saying that where there is idol worship, where there is sins of adultery, it's a blemish in them. So I might have thought, kol shamum posel bo, dvar erva vavodas kochavim posel bo. In animals, which get disqualified by a regular blemish, even a small blemish, let's say, some cataract in the eye, disqualify an animal. So then idol worship and adultery, mashchasam, also disqualifies. But kol she'eina mum posel bo, but I would have thought those creatures that don't get disqualified with small blemishes, like birds, they don't get disqualified with small blemishes. They only get disqualified by a huge blemish, let's say missing a limb, Rashi says. But a small blemish doesn't disqualify them. So then I might have thought they don't have mashchasam either. Ein dvar ever was kochavim poslin bo, then illicit relations or being worshipped also wouldn't disqualify it, because I would think that there's this link. Mashchasam is linked to mum. So those things that have mum have the problem of mashchasam. Those things that don't have mum don't have the problem of mashchasam. That's what I would have thought. So hani ophos, these birds, they don't have a disqualification of a blemish. As we've learned before, idea that it has to be whole without any blemish, or that it should be a male in regards to an ola, that's only in regards to animals. But there is no law that it has to be complete, whole, and it must be a male in regards to birds. So therefore, I might have thought even if they get or used in some illicit relations or used in avodah zarah, they also shouldn't be disqualified. That's why I need to have this pasuk of. That's why I need to have the pasuk of minat torim min bnei Yonah to exclude nirva and nevad from avodah zarah. So if so, nirva and nevad to avodah zarah from being used as a carbon. If so, this pasuk minat torim min bnei Yonah is not excluding necessarily birds with yellow feathers. So we don't have a resolution to our question. We wanted to know, when the Mishnah says you can't use birds with yellow feathers, doesn't mean, because we don't know how to classify it, maybe it's a minor, maybe it's an adult bird, that's why you can't use it, or are we saying for sure it's neither a minor nor an adult bird, it's something in the middle, that's why you can't use it, there's a pasuk excluding it? We really don't know, because the pasuk maybe is not excluding the birds with the yellow feathers, the pasuk is only talking about birds that are worshipped or birds that are used for avodah zarah, and I need a pasuk to exclude them, because I might have thought that since in birds you don't have bal mum, so maybe you don't have the psul, you don't have the disqualification of nevad or nirva. That's I need to learn from the pasuk of minat torim bnei Yonah that you do have the disqualification of nevad and nirva. So there, as to the Gemara is going to talk about all sorts of situations of something in the middle. Is it based on a suffix, or is it some new category because it's in the middle? So, for example, the Gemara is going to talk about animals. There is an animal called keves, and then when it's older, it's called ayil. So, keves means a 1-year-old lamb. Ayil means into the second year. Into the second year means it's already a full month into the second year. So, after the 13th month, then it's called ayil for the rest of its life. So, the Gemara says, what about that 13th month? Palgas. Yep. What is the palgas? Is palgas safek keves, safek ayil? Maybe it's considered the young, maybe it's considered the old. Or maybe we know it's not keves, and we know it's not ayil, it's something else. It's something in the middle. It's this new thing, we just don't know how to classify the new thing. Or maybe it's part of keves, or maybe it's part of ayil. A similar question the Gemara is going to raise is in terms of chametz. So we know that there is dough that's not chametz, that's matzah. And then there's dough that became chametz. That's when it fermented so much that all the cracks that are created by the CO2 bubbles are interlocking. It looks like a spider's web. So that's chametz. What about if the dough has risen, the dough's face has changed, it looks whitish, but it doesn't have any cracks. So it's not matzah, but it's not yet chametz. So what is that? Is that maybe matzah, maybe chametz? It's called sior. Is sior maybe matzah, maybe chametz? Or is sior a new category unto itself? And achronim, rabbis or yeshiva, they like this Gemara very much because they use it for other situations. Let's say androgynous. You have a man who has both the hermaphrodite. He has both the male and female anatomy. So is it a suffix? We just don't know. Is he male or is he female? Or maybe we know he's not male and he's not female, and he's something in the middle. And then you have a question, how do you treat that which is in the middle? But you know for sure it's in the middle. Or when you have something like Bein Hashmashos, you know, you have day and you have night. What about Bein Hashmashos, in between day and night? Is Bein Hashmashos a suffix? Maybe day, maybe night? Or is Bein Hashmashos something in the middle, between day and night? So this is a very exciting Gemara. That's really the topic. We started off with birds, and now we're going to move on to other items.
Right?
Exactly. The answer to it all is Teku. We're waiting for Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come. He's going to resolve all the questions, all the doubts, all the fine matters of law. Exactly.
What about like a bar mitzvah 13 in one day? So here we know it's 1 year and 1 day, right?
Maybe animals are different. All right, boy, Reb Zera. Reb Zera had the following question, following doubt. Omer, a guy says, Harei olai olas behema. I'm making a neder that upon me is an obligation to bring to God an olah of an animal. So it's not a bird. It's going to be one of the sheep. But I'm not yet deciding which one. It could be either mina ayil or mina keves. I could either bring an ayil and that would fulfill this vow, or I could bring a keves and that would also fulfill the vow. I'm saying I'm going to bring an animal, but it's up to me to decide later, ayil or keves. And what did he do? Vehevi palgas. He brought a sheep in the middle of its 13th month. If he would have brought this sheep 2 months ago in the 11th month of the sheep, it would be keves. That would fulfill the vow, because he said, oh, keves o ayil. If he would have brought it a month later, it'll be 13 and a half months. That also certainly fulfill the vow. At that point, it's ayil. But he didn't do that. He didn't wait till the 13th month. It was in the 13th month. So he brought it in that time when it's in this twilight zone, and it's Bein Hashmashos. So what's the halacha? Now, the Gemara says like this. I'll leave it to Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Yochanan, lo tibayalach. It's not a question. So Amar Briyahi. Rabbi Yochanan holds that a palgas is its own creature. It's neither keves nor ayil. It's not because he learned in the Mishnah. The time we learned in the Mishnah, in Paro, that the sheep in the 13th month is not ayil, nor is it keves. So let's say a person brings such a sheep. What type of nesachim, what type of libation should he accompany it with? So if he brings it, maybe alav niske ayil, he brings the libations, the liquids that normally accompany an ayil. Vein olam mizivcha. And if he had promised to bring a keves, so bringing the palgas wouldn't fulfill his obligation. So Rabbi Yochanan, or if he promised to bring an ayil, also bringing the kalbas wouldn't fulfill the obligation. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan said the reason why he brings the niske ayil, the wine libations of ayil, is because the Torah says in Parsha Shlach, Ola ayil ta'aseh mincha. For the fact it says Ola ayil, the Rabbah says a palgas. That's to say that the palgas also gets the same nesachim as the ayil. So what do you see? The reason why it doesn't fulfill his vow, if he vowed a keves or an ayil, is because the palgas is neither. But nevertheless, he still has to bring the nesachim of the ayil because of the special pasuk of Ola ayil. So the Gemara says, okay, it's not a question for Rabbi Yochanan. Certainly, if a guy promised that he's going to bring a carbon of either ayil or keves, palgas is something different, so it wouldn't work. So, what is the question? Kiti bayalach. The question is, aliba de bar pida. According to the opinion of bar pada, to Amar, who said, now starting Chav Gimel Amid Beis, he says that a person who promised to bring an ayil or a keves, and instead he's bringing a palgas. So he said, Maisi, he brings this palgas, umasi, and he makes a country, and he makes a stipulation. He says, if it's obligated in the keves nesachim, so I'm bringing too much. When I bring the ayil nesachim, so the extras are just a donation of nesachim. And if it's obligated in ayil nesachim, so I'm bringing the ayil nesachim with it, so that's all fine. So now the question is like this: what type of a condition does he make? That his condition is like this. He says, really, the palgas is maybe ayil, maybe keves. So if the palgas is keves, then I'm bringing too much wine, too much oil. So the extra amounts that I'm bringing should be just a gift. And if it's ayil, then fine. Then it's the right amount. And he doesn't say, oh, there's a third option. Maybe it's neither ayil nor keves. And the Torah never said it has to have any nesachim, and maybe all of these nesachim are a donation. He doesn't say that. Oh, Dilmar, maybe when he makes his condition, he says, if it's a keves, most of these liquids are nesachim, the extras are just a gift. If it's an ayil, all of it is what it's supposed to be. And he says, or if it's something on its own, it's a bria on its own, then the whole thing is a gift. So Dilmar, b'bria nami masna, he says, if the pagas is its own creature, have a kula nedava, then all of the nesachim is a donation. Right? That's the question. According to Bar Pada, maybe there's a suffix 3 ways about the palgas. And therefore, maybe it doesn't work for a guy who brings it as a carbon for his vow of an ayil or keves. If he said, I'm bringing an ayil or a keves, so if Bar Pada holds that a palgas is just a suffix, maybe ayil, maybe keves, then manav shach, either way it will work. Because if it's ayil, it worked. If it's a keves, it worked. But if even according to Bar Pada, there are really 3 options. Maybe it's ayil, maybe it's keves, maybe it's just something on its own. So then it maybe didn't work. So that's our question. Does it work when a person promises, I'm bringing an ayil or a keves? That's what he says. He's going to bring either or. And now I brought a palgas. Did it work? And now, as Baruch predicted, the answer is teku. We don't know. We'll have to wait for Eliyahu Navi Zachurato. 1 second, yeah.
Who is the sheriff in the Beit HaMikdash to check these things out? Is that Kohen Gadol, the sheriff, or
Kohen Gadol? No, they had courts. The Kohanim were all educated.
They brought the animal, and somebody had to answer. So this is 1 year old. This is birth certificate. Do all the inspections.
They had Kohanim. The Kohanim were very, very learned in the laws of Kachim.
So they ask all.
Listen, Kohanim in the Torah system are not supposed to have land. It's an agricultural-based economy. 90% are working the land. The Kohanim don't have any land, and they get supported from all the rest of us with Truma,
right,
and with the other gifts, Reishis Hagez and Zorah L'Chayayim V'Keva. They get supported by the rest of us. And what are they supposed to be doing? They're supposed to be reviewing all these laws, all these details, and they're sitting and studying. They're the first kolo. The first kolo were the Kohanim. They were sitting and learning, and the rest of us were supporting them.
So any animal came in, there were a bunch of questions that had to be answered, I guess, right?
The Kohanim would check it.
Before the sheikh happening. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I think Gava had a question. What was it, Gava?
I know, I was just mentioning that in the first Beit HaMikdash, this question never existed, because the Sanhedrin would just make the decision. All the machlokot started second temple towards the end.
Yeah.
The Sanhedrin didn't exist. There was nobody, because there were no sfikot.
Well, you had a Sanhedrin. You had a Sanhedrin till very late. You have a Sanhedrin till Usha.
Yeah, but the Sanhedrin during the second temple, at least the later part, was not as authoritative as it was in the first temple. In the first temple,
it was authoritative. It was just the Sadducees didn't listen to it, but they were there. They were making decisions. You had Shimon ben Gamliel, these were big people.
It doesn't mean much. On the other hand, in the first temple, there was a Sanhedrin, there was no stekot. Any question came to the Sanhedrin. That's what the Mishnah says. Came to the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin said, I'm sure there was a rule about Pilgats. I'm sure there
must have been, right? It's a pretty basic question. People must have forgotten. Yeah, question is he?
When they say what they mean, it's
in its first year.
In the first.
Yeah, from
cannot go more than
8 days old until 12 months.
12 months. So much begin to say.
Yeah. Yeah. So now a similar question, like Palgas. This is about, as I mentioned, Seor. Reb Zeir asked the following question. Omer, a man who says about Harei Olai Lachmei Toda. On me is an obligation of Toda breads. Now remember, Toda breads, 30 of them are matzah, 10 of them are chametz. He said, I have an obligation to bring Toda breads. Mina chametz o mina matzah. But my obligation will be fulfilled with whatever I choose, either chametz or matzah. The heavy seyor, and he brought seyor, something which is not yet chametz, maybe, and it's already seemingly past matzah. Mahu, so what's the halacha? So the Gemara says, well, Seyor Deman, whose definition of Seyor? Seyor Rabbi Meir, if it's the definition of Seyor of Rabbi Meir, namely that the dough has risen and its color has changed a little bit. So now, the Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that Seyor means like a spider's web, lots and lots and lots of cracks. So according to this, if it's just that the dough rose and its face changed, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, matzah mal yasid. So what he brought is just regular matzah. And if we're talking about that he brought was the Seyor of Rabbi Yehuda, namely that it's filled like a spider web, that's also still karnei chagavim, like the not like a spider web yet. It has cracks like the grasshopper horns. So the Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, that's already considered chametz, and he said he could either bring chametz or matzah. So the Gemara says, and Rabbi Meir, and if we're saying that what he brought was the Seyor of Rabbi Meir, namely that the dough has risen and changed colors. And the question is, Rabbi Meir. According to Rabbi Meir, could this work for his vow, which was either matzah or chametz? So the Gemara says, still, according to Rabbi Meir, the lucky aleit, since Rabbi Meir holds that somebody who eats Seyor gets malkos for violating chametz. So you see chametz. You see it's chametz. Of course it works for his vow. His vow was maybe I'm bringing chametz. Ella, so it has to be like this. To Rabbi Yehuda, it's Rabbi Yehuda's Seyor, namely cracks like the horns of grasshoppers. The Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that this Seyor should be burned, but if you eat it on Pesach, you wouldn't get malchus. So now the question is, what does Rabbi Yehuda think about such material? Is it that Sveika Havya, something like this, is a suffix? So if it's a suffix, maybe it's chametz, maybe it's matzah. That's why if somebody eats it, you wouldn't get malchus because you can't give lashes on what was only maybe an avera. It's a suffix. On the other hand, you're supposed to burn it because maybe it is chametz. So if that's what's going on, so then in regards to the vow, nafik memanav shach. Either way, it should work. Because if it was chametz, he said if I bring chametz, it'll work. And if it's matzah, he said if I bring matzah, it works. Or maybe this Seyor, according to Rabbi Yehuda, namely dough which has cracks in it like the horns of grasshoppers, but the cracks haven't intermingled like a spider's web. They just have separate lines. Dilma may be briyahu. That's something new. That's some other creature, neither chametz nor matzah. So if it's neither chametz nor matzah, he promised to bring either chametz or matzah. This is neither. Lo nafik, he doesn't fulfill his obligations. The Gemara says, really, that's the question. Didn't Rav Huna say, Omer harei alai lachmei toda. Going back to Masechta Menachos, the person says, on me there's an obligation to bring the bread of a toda. All right, once you say that, you have to bring the whole thing. Maybe he told he has to bring the animal, v'lachma, and all of his breads. So 1 second, came when the chayiv le b'toda v'lachma. So if he has to bring the toda with his breads, right? If the seyor is a suffix, maybe it's matzah, maybe it's chametz. How can you say he fulfilled his vow? Once he says, I'm bringing toda, he means I'm bringing an animal and the 40 loaves. So now you don't know, right? If it's a suffix, if it was chametz, he has to bring another 10 matzahs. If it was matzah, then the laisi chametz, he has to make sure that he has to bring the chametz things that he has to bring. So the Gemara says, lo tzrich, in the case like this. The Amar, he said, arei alai, on me there's an obligation of eser chalos, of 10 loaves. It can either be chametz or matzah, liftor todaso shel ploni, on behalf of somebody else's karban toda. Reuven has a karban toda he has to bring. I'm promising to bring either 10 of the chametz loaves that he needs or 10 of the matzah loaves that he needs. So it's not me. Since it's not me, the question is, did I fulfill my obligation with this seyor? So Gemara says, still, but still. But that guy's not going to know what he got. Did he get from me chametz? Did he get from me matzah? How can we say I fulfilled my obligation with manav shach? The case is the lo am a lifter. I didn't say I'm going to try to exempt him. I didn't say I'm going to try to exempt him. I'm just saying I'm going to bring part of what he needs to bring. either chametz or matzah. It'll be my choice later, what it'll be. Not that I need to exempt him. He could be left with a mess, but that's okay. I just need to bring part of what he needs to bring. So that's what we're saying. If this seir is a safek chametz, safek matzah, then I would fulfill the obligation. If it's a bria, if it's a separate creature, I didn't fulfill my vow. So the Gemara says, this is the question. Did I fulfill my vow? Lo nafik, but maybe I didn't fulfill my vow, because maybe seir is not a safek, seir, even according to Yehuda, is bria b'fnei atzma. Gemara says again, Teiku, we don't know the answer, we're going to have to wait for Liyahu Navi to resolve this question. Their question.
Yeah, Rabbi, the initial mixture of preparation for matzah is all the same.
Correct.
Now, the cooking 18 minutes.
Good.
Am I right? Now, if it comes out bubbly or no bubbly or whatever, why they put a thing in it? Is it kosher? Is not kosher? It just they did everything correctly. All the steps are taken.
First of all, I don't know if they had clocks, right? I'm not sure about the clocks. They had, they would look at it. If it was fermenting, then it was chametz. And if it was beginning to ferment, that's our question. Is that chametz? Is that matzah? Is it something in the middle?
Because a lot of matzahs we eat has a little bubble on it. Is that mean it's not kosher? It's not a kosher matzah? Is that
So
what it is?
the matzahs that we eat, it's really, I think, a legitimate question how we got to this point. We have extremely thin matzahs.
Correct.
And doesn't seem like that's the way it was, because we talk, for example, in the Haggadah of korech matzah umara. Korech means to wrap. You wrap the matzah, the maror, and the korban pesach. So it sounds like from the Gemara that the matzah of those days was like an ish tanur. It was a much thicker, it's like a pizza. It was a much thicker piece of dough.
Today they are
Some still
of
do
They don't make
that.
it like they used to.
That seems to be much more likely to be the right matzah, but I don't know how we got to the point that our matzahs are so thin, and we're so. The halacha is that if there's a bubble, it's no good.
But
There's a bubble, it's no good.
matzahs
No, you have to check. We try to check the matzahs to make sure that there are no bubbles, because if there are bubbles, it's no good. But it's a question how it got to that point, because as you say, even if there's a bubble, it's clearly that the dough hasn't. I think the reason with the bubble why it's no good is because the thought is that maybe the heat didn't go all the way through, didn't really bake it, but it's hard to say that. And that's the thought. Maybe it's fermenting later.
You gotta take a trip to Shatzir.
All right, we're up to the next Mishnah. So we had started with birds. We said that with birds, shchita's in the front of the neck, malika's at the nape of the neck. We said where the place which is good for shchita is not good for malika. The place which is good for malika is no good for shchita. So now that leads us to other cases of things which are somewhat similar. It would work for one, it wouldn't work for the other. So we're going to talk about para aduma and egla arufa. Para aduma is the red cow, which gets burned, and the ashes get mixed with spring water to sprinkle on someone who's tamei mace to purify him. And egla arufa is the calf whose head is chopped off, and it creates an atonement for the fact that there is a dead body here in the land of Israel, and we don't know the story of this person. So, kasher b'para, what works for para aduma, namely a regular shchita, pasul be'egla. That doesn't work with egla arufa. Egla arufa, regular shchita, would not fulfill the law. Kasher be'egla, what works with egla arufa, chopping off the head from the back, pasul b'para. That would disqualify a para aduma. Tana Rabbana lived in a brisa. Para b'shchita kshera. Para aduma, if you slaughtered in the front, it's kasher. Ba'arifa, chopping off the back, this pasul is no good. Egla, when it comes to egla arufa, ba'arifa kshera, chopping off the back, that's what's kasher. B'shchita psula, if you shecht from the front, it would be no good. Nimtze, so it comes out kasher b'para. What works for para, namely shchita, pasul be'egla is no good for egla arufa. Kasher be'egla, namely arifa, is no good in para, pasul b'para. So the Gemara says the same thought that we had mentioned earlier yesterday. We'd say, hey, para ksher ba'arifa mikal v'chomer. Why don't we say that a para aduma, if the back of it is chopped off, like the egla arufa, should work based on a kal v'chomer. So like this, my egla shlo huchshra b'shchita. Egla doesn't work with shchita. Huchshra ba'arifa, nevertheless arifa does work. Para shehuchshra b'shchita, para that is okay with shchita, didn't huchshra ba'arifa. Certainly it should be okay with Arifa? The answer is Amar, because therefore the pasuk says, you'll give it to Elazar the Kohen and slaughter it before him. And it says, Chuka. So it's Chuka Satzora. That's to say it's a law, it's an absolute law. The way it has to be is this way. So it has to be V'shachat. The shachat is a Chuka. The shchita the shchita yes, Ba'arifa lo. But chopping off the head, not chopping off the head, does not work in preparing a para aduma. So to review what we learned today, we learned about intermediaries, things that are in the middle, namely in regards to birds, in regards to an animal. Well, we started with birds. We started with a bird that has yellow feathers, either a pigeon or a turtle dove. Is that we don't know yet if it's mature or adult. We're not sure if it's mature or adult. Or is it certainly neither? Then we have a question about, we know a very young sheep is called keves. After that first year, it's called ayil. What about if it's in the middle? The 13th month, palgas, is that maybe keves, maybe ayil, or certainly not, certainly something in the middle. And then another question was in regards to chametz. We know what matzah is, we know what chametz is. What about the middle area, seor? It has some amount of fermentation, but not full fermentation. Is that a suffix chametz, suffix matzah? Or is that certainly something in the middle? And finally, the last thing that we discussed was that para aduma, even though the whole thing gets burned, nevertheless there is the real peda. It has to be shechted. It says chuka, eglarufa, even though it gets killed, it can only be killed through arifa. To get the kapara, it can't be killed through shchita.